Well, good afternoon. It is 2 o'clock Central Time and 3 o'clock Eastern Time where Stephanie and I are located. But I want to welcome you to the HiSET program overview today. And we will have some time at the end for some Q&A, just in case you have questions. Or I will be having Stephanie monitor our chat in case you want to throw some questions or some content into the chat as well. So I'd like to introduce myself. I am Tess Urich. I am the HiSET Adult Education Manager, and I am currently working across the U.S. with the different states that offer HiSET with training, professional development. You may see me at conferences, but I am here to assist you as adult educators in training your staff or talking about the HiSET or just answering any questions that may come up regarding the HiSET exam and program. So I am very happy to be here. I just retired from Ohio with about 25 years of experience in adult education and also as a special education teacher. So I have been out in the field for many years and absolutely love working with our students and hope that I can do the same with you as I work here with the HiSET program. And Steph, if you're able, would you introduce yourself as well?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stephanie Bauer, and I am the account manager for HiSET. And while I primarily work with contractual items, I do spend a lot of my time out in the field interacting with folks and getting to hear more about the needs of our team members. So I am very happy to be here to support Tess in the background today. And thank you all for joining us.
Thanks, Steph. Appreciate it. So our presentation today is probably going to take about 40 minutes, and then we'll have plenty of time for a question and answer issues that may come up. And again, please throw things in the chat, and Stephanie will help me on that side of things as we go along. So Minnesota, of course, is new to the HiSET program, but I'd like to give you a little background on general equivalency diplomas. In case you are not familiar, the general education diplomas were actually started by the U.S. military back in the 1940s to assist those in the service and coming out of the service to continue on their educational journey. So at that time, the GED, as it was so named, for the general education diploma, or as it was coming out, has been that way for many, many years. Back in 2014, the government decided to privatize that and give that over to a private company. And so Pearson VUE bought the name GED, and then a request for proposals was put out to anyone looking to prepare a high school equivalency test. So back in 2014, there were 3 entities selected to give a high school equivalency exam. One of those was GED, which was Pearson VUE owned and still is. The HiSET, which at that time was owned by a company called ETS, now owned by PSI, and an exam called the TASK. And currently, it is only 2. The TASK has fallen away, and now the only 2 exams a student may take to earn their high school equivalency is the HiSET and the GED. Different states will either pick one of those tests or they will pick both and become a dual state. So currently, of course, Minnesota is a dual state. And I am just here to talk about the HiSET and some of the maybe issues or thoughts in this, anything that we can talk about to familiarize yourself with the HiSET exam. So of course, back in October, a year ago in October, PSI purchased the HiSET program, and thus now we are underneath PSI and no longer with ETS. And we have been going full throttle for just over a year and working all the bugs and kinks out, and it has become a really great program for students to have another option to acquire their high school equivalency. There is a team that is backing up the high school equivalency team here at HiSET, and that would be myself as the adult ed manager. And I am newer to the HiSET team, starting back in June. Diana McNeil Brown is our client service manager, and under her is Roger Creek. So you may encounter them if you're on the state teams as they're working preliminary with the states. Jay Clayton is our network support, and Holly Kincaid is your regional site supervisor. So she is going to become very important to you as you go along your HiSET journey. We do have test taker services that help test takers if they have an issue such as their birthday is wrong, they have a name change, things like that as they're preparing to take their actual exam or having issues the day of their exam. And then we, of course, have accommodations. Steph Bauer has introduced herself, and she is our HiSET account manager doing all the contractual fun things out there in the field. And then Tanya Hogg is our VP of HiSET, and I'm sure a lot of you have already come in contact with Tanya. And also the HiSET program is backed by many departments, such as our team, who is front and center. And then we also have content sciences that create all of the content. We have accounting for those billing issues. We have general counsel in case legal issues come up. There's all types of departments that are supporting the HiSET program and in return supporting you as an educator and your students. The HiSET exam is part of PSI services and the PSI service family. So one of the great benefits of taking the HiSET exam is that students that want to continue on with their educational journey are already familiar with the process. They already have accounts set up, and they can continue on taking credentials and licensure as they get more education under their belt. Part of the things that PSI does is licensing for real estate, contractors, insurance, all types of different things from private investigators to auctioneers, just a plethora of different licensing tests that are taken through PSI. We also hold national certification testing for FFA, for health and engineering, just a whole lot of different things that students might become involved in. And already having that background with HiSET is a great help to them overcoming some of their barriers. The HiSET, of course, functions through many different clients and many different stakeholders. Some clients will come straight through Department of Ed. Some are through the Department of Labor, possibly through corrections or community colleges or career centers. There are testing centers that are solely affiliated with school districts. Some are affiliated with Department of Corrections. Some are just independent testing centers. There's various different ways that a test center can get set up, and we can talk about that a little bit later. Of course, there are adult ed programming and advocates that are working within Department of Corrections and Workforce, also independent, coming through some social service organizations. Maybe they're with the HEP federal grant programming, working with migrants. There's just a whole lot of ways that someone can get involved with the HiSET program. And of course, there's always the test takers themselves with different eligibility requirements coming state to state. So there are different age minimums, different waivers. So as we look at Minnesota, we're going to look at some of these issues that test takers may need to know about. As we go through, please make sure you ask any questions. So let's talk about the actual HiSET exam and some of the reasons that a student might want to choose this, or you as an educator or program might decide to send a student towards the HiSET. Some of the benefits are that we are very flexible. So there are multiple modalities students can take the HiSET test in. And we're going to talk about those here in a minute, but they are paper-based, computer-based, and at-home online proctoring. So it is very flexible for the student and their needs. There are familiar question types. So the actual HiSET is comprised of just multiple choice and one essay. So students, no matter their age or their ability or how well versed they are on computer usage and all of those different questioning types that can be in the computer testing, we have chosen to solely work with multiple choice and a written essay. We do have a very high passage rate of about 80% across the board. So it is a very, well done test. And our passage rate is across the US at about 80. There is, of course, affordability. We are the least expensive high school equivalency test, and that does remove some barriers, of course, for students. As we, look to do that as a company, we want to make sure that students are focused for us. There is free test prep. So we'll talk about some of the things that we offer for test prep and then some of our partners. Of course, there is a network of adult educators. So as we meet and collaborate at different conferences, there's great times to work together within your state. And then, of course, if you attend outside conferences such as COABE, there's great places to work together as educators. And we would love to be part of that as well. We are accessible. And then, of course, we have alternative formats. So a student can take 3 different times within a year so that they have different options of passing the test. So our exam delivery is based on 3 different modalities, one being paper-based, one being computer-based, and then of course the computer-based online proctored that is done either at home or can be done at a site if there is a quiet place to do that testing. Paper-based testing in Minnesota has some guidelines attached, and you will find this, of course, in your Minnesota state website and also here that the HiSET exam is available in the paper format, but there are some requirements in order to take that. And some of the requirements that are allowable are for those that have disability accommodations. Someone may have special needs that require one type of format or the other. There may be an issue with religious accommodations, possibly testing in corrections facilities may prevent someone from taking a computer-based test. Of course, those individuals that have accessibility issues or other situations that can be deemed allowable by the Minnesota Department of Education. And those would be, of course, on a case-to-case basis. The at-home online proctored test is a great option for students that may reside in rural areas. Maybe there is not a testing center close to them, and they may have some barriers such as transportation, or maybe they have high anxiety and they don't want to go into a testing situation. The at-home proctor test can also be done at a site, such as your educational site, maybe in a classroom after classes are finished and it is quiet and it would be a convenient place for that student to come and test, can be set up at a site. Also, just for your knowledge, we do use a very secure browser. So there is no way that a student can get out of our testing and do any type of phishing or, looking through other internet options out there to help them with the test. We do use a very secure encrypted browser. And so our at-home online proctor test is quite safe and is pretty foolproof. So if you need any other questions answered on that, please make sure that you reach out and we can talk more on that. We do make sure that the student does have a grader coming into the at-home online proctored test and then is handed over to the proctor, who will then survey the room, the student, and the student is also required to take a selfie so that it matches the ID that they are showing. So it makes it very difficult for a student to be impersonated by someone else. So we are very pleased with the security of our at-home proctored test. The HiSET exam does have 5 sections. So we break out our reading language arts into 2 sections, one being reading, which is 50 minutes. It is, again, 100% multiple choice, and it's a 65-minute test or an 80-minute test if you are taking the exam in Spanish. Our writing is 2 sections. It is 60 multiple choice for the grammar section and 1 written essay. Math is 55, 90 minutes for that, and you are able to use a calculator for the entire math test. We do use a 4-function calculator on the actual exam if it's computer-based. And then at the test center is able to choose whether they are using a 4-function basic calculator or like a TI-30. So that would come from the test center itself. But if the student does use the on-screen, it will be a 4-function basic calculator. Science is 60 questions and 80 minutes, and social studies is 60 questions and 70 minutes. So you can kind of see the breakdown there, and it is just over 7 hours of testing time. There's different options for test registration depending on your state. Test centers can just register by creating their My HiSET account and registering that way. They can also test at a local test center, possibly through a test center administrator, if that is a closed facility, such as corrections or an options program. Of course, that would be something that states have for high school students. That is a special program. The Minnesota testing fees are set by the state, and currently they are $23.75 for the in-person testing at an official test center, $31.25 if they are testing online at the online proctored. And then, of course, if they do get approved for the paper-based testing, it is $18 plus their $10 test center fee. So you can see there that there is a fee plus a test center fee for each test. And I want to make sure that you are aware that there are 2 free tests for each purchased subtest, and they have exactly 12 months from the purchase of that subtest to use their 2 free retakes, but the student does have to pay each time their test center fee.
And Tess, this looks like a good moment to just take a quick second and stop and go through a couple of the questions. You have already
Sure.
answered the testing fees, which is one of the questions. And Brandy was also kind enough to drop the link to the requirements page in the chat. So thank you, Brandy. Another question that we've got in here from the content so far for the essay portion, does this program offer accommodations?
We'll get to that shortly. That's towards the end of our presentation.
And then there is another question about, so the paper test is only used for special circumstances. There's not a way to have the paper test option only without having an established computer testing center. And Brandy has also answered this question within the chat. But the paper version is not just for special accommodations. We do offer it as a standard format. And then a new question, can you tell us the restriction of the limit of tests in 1 calendar year?
Sure. So that's actually going to come up here. Let me hit to the next slide. So the retest policy, no-show and cancellation policies are here. And you may retake each subtest 2 times. Free retake. So if you purchase, say, a math subtest, you would be eligible to take 2 free retakes in math if you did not or were not able to pass the math subtest. Um, that is a 12-month limit, but a student can only take the test 3 times in a calendar year. So let me give you an example. Say a student took a test in November and they had taken this is their third attempt. They purchase a subtest in November, they take the subtest in math and they fail. They are done taking their tests for the calendar year because they've used up 3 tests, but they still have those 2 free retests that can go into the next calendar year and are good until that following November. So the free retakes are usable within 1 year of the purchase of that subtest. Hopefully that's making some sense. But because there are 3 forms, A, B, and C, of the HiSET exam for each subtest, so there's Math A, Math B, Math C, you can only take the 3 subtests in 1 year. And retakes are a little bit different with the free because they have that year to be used from the date of purchase. So there's 2 different things that we're looking at there. If that hopefully is making some sense.
And Brandy, I see your note in the chat and your clarification on paper-based testing. So if you wanted to just clarify that, you can. Oh, Brandy does not have the option to chat. Try now, Brandy.
Perfect, it did come. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So we do, as a state, mandate that there needs to be an accommodation for paper-based testing. But what we did as a team was to create a flexible reasoning of accommodations. So like Tess was explaining, if you have connectivity issues, if there are religious accommodations, if you are a corrections, a jail, or a prison, and then, of course, internet accessibility. And then, of course, there's those nuances of certain situations on a case by case. So the conversation has been, say a student comes to take a computer-based test and connectivity issues are that day. You have paper-based test waiting in the test center. It's not like GED where you have to then send off for the paper-based test, and it is created specifically to that student. So because you'll have paper-based testing in your facility, you will be able to take immediate action and get your student tested on paper-based. Or because you already pre-plan ahead and you know that your student will be able to meet one of these accommodation needs, then you'll be able to use a paper-based test.
Excellent. Thank you, Brandy. And that's exactly why we wanted to make sure that we had this slide specifically for Minnesota. And we do appreciate the fact that, there's different circumstances that remove barriers for students and allow them to do some paper-based testing. So thank you very much. Let me know as we go on if there's more information needed about, or you can always contact me at the end of this presentation, which will be available. You will have my contact information, so you can reach out at any time. I can work with your program specifically if you need some teacher training or want to go back over some of these questions or just have a Q&A with yourself and your staff. I am here and available for you at any time. So we'll move on. So vouchers for testing are available for the official practice test. but they are able to be purchased only by the state and through programs. So that is something that is available. And something great that Minnesota does have is a subsidy. And of course, this is as far as funding lasts in Minnesota. But Minnesotans can now get one free test in each subject by using this code when scheduling and paying for their testing, while of course approval and funding last. So you know how that goes when there are funds. But the student must enter this promotional code, and it only applies to those with a Minnesota address. So it's not for people, you know, jumping from one state that's close into Minnesota just to get the free testing. This was set up to support students that reside in Minnesota. So this is a great thing to help remove those barriers. And I know you all are much appreciate this for your students. So let's talk about scoring, because that's always a fun issue. So the HiSET scores are completely different. They're normed different. They look totally different than the other high school equivalency because our subtests are scored on a 20-point scale. So because there are 5 sections, the minimum a student can receive to pass is an 8. But they need to have a 45 overall. So that means they're going to have to get some extra points somewhere in a test that they excel at or are more comfortable at. So maybe they get 8s on 3 subtests and they get 12 and 13 on maybe 2 others that they excel at, just to make up enough points to reach the 45. So 8 is the minimum per subtest. 45 is the minimum when you're adding those scores together. One of the questions that we do get quite often is about the writing scoring system, and that is still on a 20-point scale, but the student must get a minimum of 2 on their essay, which means they must get a minimum then of enough to make that 8. So if the 2 was reached, they would need a 6 on their grammar portion. If the student somehow got a 4 on their essay score, then they would need to get a 4 on their grammar portion, the multiple choice. So however that plays out, as long as there is a 2 on the essay, the rest of the multiple choice has to make up to an 8. So that is an inclusive score of the multiple choice and the essay, making the scale score of a minimum of 8. So just as in case a student, you know, is looking at their test scores and maybe they've taken the test 2 or 3 times, they do have to receive scores in the same sitting. So they can't pull a multiple choice that was great on one day and then an essay score that was great from another test day and combine them. They have to be done on the same day in the same sitting. So that is another little caveat to the writing exam. So they must have an 8. They must do writing, essay and a multiple choice on the same sitting and achieve that 8 and a minimum of a 2 on the essay itself. If there's any questions, please let me know. For those that are doing college and career readiness, some colleges can choose to give credit for just like an AP test or something along that line if you have that at your different colleges. And they can award students credit if they have a 15 and above in a subject and a 4 on an essay.
So Tess, before you move forward, there are just a couple other questions from the last
Sure.
section I want to make sure that we address. Someone did ask if we have the ability to print the slides. So will we be making the slides available after the presentation?
Yes, we will. And they will be in a PDF format. And we're also recording this, so you can have this in a recorded version as well.
And then a student can have 2 free retakes minus a test center fee, but then if used up, can't take another purchase test.
No, you can purchase another test and then you would again get the 2 free retakes when you purchase that test. So they would be on number 4 when they had to purchase another subtest.
Right. Yeah. The follow-up question is, but it has to be the next year because of the attempts within the calendar year test.
If they've taken all 3 attempts in that calendar year, then they can use their free retakes in the following calendar year, but they are going to count towards, of course, the 3 attempts.
So Tess, this is Brainy. Can I get a little bit more clarification as that as well as, so we're going to use your scenario. I take a math, I fail the math. I have 2 additional retests in November. I take those before December 31st and I fail those 2 additional retests. So January 1st, I'm eligible to take the 4th new regular priced math and try to attempt it all over again.
So yes, so say if you're taking math for the very first time in November and you have not taken any of your attempts for the calendar year, you could use your 2 free retests and try them by December 31st. When
So then my
January,
additional question to that is, say I did that, I failed those 2 as well, which hopefully this doesn't happen, but of course we never know.
hopefully not, yes.
So now I'm in January, I take the math again and I fail again. Now I have only 2 more retests from January to December. And if I fail those 2 retests within those 12 months, I cannot test until the next January in math. Is that correct?
That is correct. So
Okay.
there's retests free, and then there's attempts. So a person gets 3 attempts in a calendar year, no matter if they're paid or free.
Correct. I just wanted to be
Mhm.
very careful about that because that's
Yes.
not what our field is used to. And so I just want to be explicit about looking towards those months and being
Yes.
having a reflection about when your students are testing, especially if they're kind of on. I've seen a lot of individuals say, well, now that the state's paying, we'll just let them try. And so we've seen some failed scores coming through. And with the HiSET, it's kind of being strategic with those calendar months, as well
Right.
as if taking retests. So I just wanted to highlight that.
Yeah, so if you think about it as attempts, with a student having 3 attempts in a calendar year, January to December, is a little different than retakes, the free retakes. So yes, be strategic. If a student is going to fail math in November, I would absolutely, because you know how many classes they're going to attend between November and January, which is pretty close to nil. I would definitely try to hold the student off unless they're a point or 2 away from passing. That's a little different. But if there's a very large gap, in their testing scores, just because it's only $10 when they pay that test center fee and the actual test is free, still try to hold them off and get some good study time in. Create a great plan over the holidays that the student can work on. Whether it's digitally or by sending work with them over the holidays. But don't put students in a situation where they're just trying to test over and over and over, hoping that they'll get it. Set them up for success. Have them try to attend some classes and do some study, join a study group, and that really will propel them faster than trying to just retake tests over and over.
So I have one more caveat to that, and I will let you go on. I apologize. I've taken the math, I failed it, and I've waited to
Mhm.
the new year to take the
Mhm.
2 retest, which are still considered 2 attempts.
Correct.
If I were to fail those 2 attempts after the first of the year, and then I tried to take my 3rd attempt, which is now a regular
Paid.
priced math, that
Correct.
is my 3rd attempt. So even though I
Yes.
have 2 more retests, I cannot take them until 12 months later,
Until the new
the
calendar
new
year.
year. If this was in scenario of
Yes.
January.
Yes.
So
So
this
that's
is why
another
I want to
thing.
be
You
very
don't,
strategic about when our
yeah.
students are taking those retests, because
Mhm.
like Tess mentioned, we do have some within a couple of scores, and then some that really do need to kind of go back and work on their skills.
Yes, so we do have in the chat, there is a question that asks, are the retakes counting as one of the attempts? And absolutely yes. So they are, like you said, the attempts are 3 in a year, whether they're paid or whether they're the free retakes. So if you kind of just categorize them as 3 attempts in a calendar year, whether they're paid or whether they're the free retakes, that is all you get. So if a student uses those all up in January, February, that student is going to leave and they're not going to have the ability to try to test again until next January. So you don't want that 10-month lag period if you know the student is not ready.
Now, does
So
HiSET offer special accommodations for one case by case scenarios? Say it's an individual that is needing it for a job promotion, or it is their last test before graduation. What is HiSET's policy on case by case scenarios of allowances beyond that calendar year?
So that is a state policy that needs to be set by the state. It's not a policy that HiSET sets.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Excellent. So we will move on to score reports. And these are samples that we currently have, and we will be doing some wording change here on these samples. But currently you can see this is the essay individual and multiple choice. So it is showing here that the student had the 2 of the essay and was able to pass with a score. Um, when it says 14, that means a 2 essay and a 2 on the multiple choice. They will also be able to, when they are finished, have a comprehensive score report that will show as they're taking their subtests what those subtest scores are on the comprehensive score report. And you can see that here. We will be making a few changes in some wording so that students, when they read that writing, will understand that their scores are inclusive, and we hope to be putting that wording out so that it shows multiple choice score, the essay score, and then the comprehensive score. So those changes will be coming in 2024. So we have some great resources that are out there and available to you. So I'd like to show you a few of those, and you can get those on our hiset.org website where we have resources located. Some of those for writing would include the rubrics. So these are great things to use in class. So it's going to show the student and any educators that are working with writing what the rubric is that is followed for scoring any of our writing tests. In addition to that, we do have the writing test with examples of student writing and an example of what they're going to be reading as a text. And our essays are going to be an opinion essay, so or also called an argumentative essay, depending on how you look at it. But the student will need to take a stand on one side or the other and be able to prove their point using factual information from the text as well as their own information. You'll see here in this resource that there's a scoring guide explaining why the score was given as it was. And this is a great activity you can use in classes with students by matching up the scoring guide with the actual essay a student might think it was. It just gives students a really good indication of what they're going to need to do as they prepare to write the essay. So some of our resources we have available are on our HiSET website. And you can see here that we will be having 2 different tabs, the test center or the test taker tab, and also the test center and educator tab. They have a few different things on each, but as you can see here with the test taker tab, it is going to talk about the actual test, the requirements, how to schedule, how to get accommodations. We'll talk about that in a second. Some ways to prepare, how to take the test, what scores mean, and then some resources for them, and then what to do after they are finished taking the exam. One of the most important pages that we have are the state requirements page. So when they pull this up, you will see a drop down here. And of course, you can put the state in that you're in. And it could be student maybe is on a border state and pulls up that state and then, pulls up Minnesota since they're living right on the border. They could be coming across state lines to maybe have class in Minnesota. So this is very, very important that a student looks at this page as well as the educator. This is a sample, so I would definitely go and look at that requirements page because it's going to talk about the age. What is the age a student can take the test? What are age waiver requirements? What are some of the requirements as far as residency? Some states will require a student to be a resident, some states do not. So these things are very, very important as a student is getting ready to test, and they will need to know this information. We also, on the same page, will have a sample of the different tests that are available. So of course, we've talked about that. There's computer-based, there's online, and there's paper-based with some restrictions. So Minnesota does have all those modalities available for students. And of course, you are part of the Department of Ed, so this is just your information. Another great feature that we have is under scheduling. And a student can go under scheduling or a test center can go under scheduling and put in your zip code or your state as a whole, or you can put in an area and it will pull up testing centers as well as adult education programs. So this is a really good thing for students looking for programs and also looking for test centers. And then transcripts, of course, for any of the tests are available here as shown. And for those of you that are out there with a test center, we do have great support from our client services and our candidate services, and also from your regional site supervisor. And they handle different types of questions that come in. So your test taker support is going to, of course, work with the actual test taker for name changes or, issues there. Test center support, which is your regional site supervisor, which is Holly Kincaid, will work with also support of the actual test center and session management and training of your TCAs, which is your test center administrators, and also with billing and such. And then we have client services reps that work with each state individually. For the test centers and the adult educators, we have 3 tabs under resources that have a variety of documents, training materials, how to, just a plethora of different things you can avail yourself of. They're all printable. So you'll see there's the manual, there's flyers, there's information for test centers on pulling rosters and scheduling and all those different items. Your regional site supervisor is very important to everyone because they are the ones that get into the nitty-gritty of handling all of the issues that come up. So I'm going to here give you a link to Holly. Test center help is for like emergency things or working with site setup, ordering paper-based materials, things like that. This is going to be a very important phone number page for you, and it will be sent out as part of this in the PDF format of this presentation. So you'll have your regional site supervisor information here in a second, site admin, session management, and here are the very important phone numbers that you may be using as you go along in your HiSET journey. So this is very important. There is a link here to the Test Center support form. And you can see that there will be a drop down, and you can reach out to any of these departments to assist you. But the very most important one is here, contacting your regional site supervisor. So if there's a problem that's not getting taken care of, or there's an issue that you're trying to solve with a student, please feel free to reach out using this Test Center support form. It is not to be given out to students. This is specifically for test centers and for those advocates working on behalf of the student, but is definitely not to be put out in the hands of the student. So if you would use this test center form and reach out to your regional site supervisor, you will get in contact with Holly this way. And I'm going to skip over a couple things here just because I want to get to accommodations.
And Tess, there were a couple questions inside here.
Yep.
Are there official practice tests available? Are they done in testing centers or on paper and pencil? And how many versions are available?
And we're going to get to that in just a moment as well. So I'll answer that in a couple slides.
And then there was another question on testing sites in Minnesota offering HiSET. If so, how many?
All right, so testing centers in like specific to HiSET, I believe, and Brandy, you can jump on as well, that there are currently 3. And I believe we are working on getting many more set up in the state. And just remember that online proctoring can be done in-home, or it can be done at your educational site. So keep that in mind as well.
Thanks, Tess. Yeah, I was just typing. So we do have 4 official. One is a jail or corrections facility, and then 3 are open to the public. That is Hobbs, Harmony, and as South Washington County as well. And we are working with the HiSET team to onboard more as we speak, and then bring more testing centers to your local area.
Yes, and if you have desire to become a testing center, please reach out to Brandy, and we can talk about those requirements if needed. So we would love to have more in all portions of the state.
I also like to also put out there, as people are looking to onboard HiSET or looking into the requirements to become a test center, online proctoring is also available at any program if you choose to use that for contact hours, like some centers and programs do with their current GED options. So that is where a student can come to your facility and use your location and environment, a more controlled environment. And then you are able to collect those contact hours because HiSET has the proctor through the browser themselves. So that is another option just to kind of get your toes wet.
Awesome. Thanks, Brandy. That's a great recommendation. So with accommodations, whoops, sorry about that. Hopefully I'm still sharing my screen.
You are. We still see you.
Ah, weird things happen. So back to accommodations. So we do have the best accommodations approval rating, quickness, and the amount of people we can get approved for accommodations are awesome. We generally will approve accommodations in a couple different ways. One is the normal path of having an IEP, having a 504 plan, having a diagnosis, of course, from a doctor or psychologist or counselor. But one of the best things that we do have is that an educator can write a letter asking on behalf of the student for accommodations. So it's especially helpful in corrections where there's the inability to maybe get a hold of paperwork to be able to get a diagnosis, but we know that there is a great need in the corrections facilities for accommodations. So an educator can write that letter with some backup. I would not just say, hey, this guy needs some accommodations, but back it up with some test scores. Maybe you did an initial test coming in, and the student tested at an NRS level 2 in their reading. And then they say, oh, by the way, I have an IEP. I really need accommodations. So then you retest them, and all of a sudden their NRS level jumps up to a 4. There's a great indication that just having maybe that extra time or those supervised breaks really assisted the student in gaining what they needed to have with that test. It would be a great thing to do. You could also just do it from your recommendations on working with the student, that there's a difference when working in a classroom setting as opposed to working alone where it's quiet and a student is able to concentrate. So with our accommodations process, either the medical, an IEP, a 504, or a teacher letter, educator letter on letterhead signed by yourself in conjunction with the student can suffice to garner the student the accommodations that they are seeking. So this is a really exciting thing for students that can't get those diagnoses because we know how costly they are. And so it really helps the student overcome that barrier. One of the things that they do need to be patient on, though, is waiting for the accommodations team to contact them and help set that up. Because if a student has accommodations, they cannot schedule that test on their own. They must work with accommodations who will work with the test center and get that set up for them. So that is the one caveat, that they'll get their accommodations usually within 48 to 72 hours. Sometimes I've seen it as quick as 8 hours that they will get approval. And they get so excited, they just want to jump on and schedule their test. That is going to waylay them because then they have to get backed out of that test and they have to work with accommodations. So if you can be very cognizant when working with students, they have to be able to wait to contact accommodations before scheduling. Because sometimes if there's a private room needed, that test center may only have specific days they can do that. If they need to find a reader or a scribe, it may take a couple weeks to find one that is available during the student's requested hours and the test center's requested hours. So there's just a little bit of finesse that goes on there when trying to schedule with the student and the test center, and if there's any exterior personnel needed as well. So while we have the best accommodations approval, it does take a couple weeks to get that student set up to get that test done. There are also some things a student can bring with them, such as tinted or colored overlays. So if you're using Erlen screens or something of that sort, earplugs, of course, not using Apple earpods or anything like that, but just regular earplugs, magnifying devices that are non-electronic. Those types of things are accessible for a student to bring, and they don't require any approval. So our accommodations process only requires one form to be submitted. You can see it here. It is just filled out with the test taker information, what you are asking for, and put reasoning behind it. And then at the bottom, you will see there is a place to do a drop. So any information that you have, such as the diagnosis, an old IEP, and it does not have to be up to date. It can be an old IEP from high school or middle school, because we know that usually the diagnosis is not going to change. But if they have that, and like an older one, they can submit that as well. Maybe they had a 504, so they didn't quite get to the IEP stage. You can submit that. Or again, the teacher letter on letterhead that is signed can be submitted here for the student.
So test after practice tests, we do have one other question that I think is good and important to address before we leave for today. The question is, I'm curious about what advantages you believe HiSET offers over the GED or key differences.
So I will tell you that each of the tests is going to focus on the exact same content standards. So while we're normed a little bit differently and our question are different, our modalities are a little more flexible with HiSET, we are still looking at the same content standards. So those are approved by Octave. And so whether you are having a prep course for GED or your prep course for HiSET, the content is going to be the same. It's just the delivery that's different. The flexibility is different. The ability to take online proctored tests and or the paper-based test is, more of that flexibility. The fact that a student has to not worry about all the different types of testing questions, such as drop and drag, and putting points on a line of an axis, doing write-in math questions where they're writing in the answer of a math test. None of that is on the HiSET because we are strictly a multiple choice test. So whether a student is just coming out of school, they might be a little more familiar with those types of modalities in a test. But if you have students that are older who are, kind of scared of the computer test as it is, knowing that it's only multiple choice really takes away a barrier for those students that want to just focus on content. But again, if you are doing programming and curriculum, it is going to be based on the college and career readiness standards that are set out by Octave. Hopefully that answers some of that question. And I want to quickly, we only have a few minutes left. I would like to quickly talk about the practice test. We do have a brand new practice official test coming out in Q1 of 2024. So hopefully we are looking for a March release date for the version 12 of the official practice test. And then we do have free, paid, and official practice tests out there and available for the students. On our website, a student can just go on and do a free half-length practice test, as you can see here. It can be downloaded and worked on. It's great. It has explanations. It's just a really great thing for student people to practice over and over as they get familiar with the content and get familiar with the structure of the test. And that, of course, is in both languages. And then we also have a great free interactive practice test. And anytime you pull down a state requirements page, at the bottom of every state requirements page, you will see math, reading, science, social studies, and writing. And if you clicked that, you will see an interactive free practice test. So the student can do that right online, and it does mimic our official test. So that's a great thing a student can do. It's anonymous, so they don't put in their information. They can do it over and over just to get used to the format and how the tests and stuff are worded. When that interactive practice test comes up, I will tell you that you'll see it like this with the explanation and a sample. And then it's going to ask if you want to end your test or continue. You do want to end this example, and then it will start you into the actual test. So make sure that when a student's doing that, when they see this first on the screen, they read it, they do the little sample. They do want to end this portion so that they can go into the actual interactive side of things. A student can also go on and at the PSI online store, they can purchase a test that's downloadable. And then they can do through their state or their program. The state and the program are the only ones that have accessibility to the official practice test. And that is also digital, that is held by Essential Education. So a student can go onto Essential Education, which is a software platform if you're not familiar with them, and purchase each subtest by setting up their own account. Or if you have them, they can go through their account that is currently set up. And it's $2 per subtest to take those official practice tests. So either way, the state can or your program can purchase an official practice test, or they can digitally go on and use that practice test official through Essential Education. They are one of our partners.
Yes, and I'd like to add that we do have free vouchers currently that we purchased when we first onboarded HiSET, and we
Awesome.
still have several hundred. And the goal was to let any administrator, teacher to take a practice test if they choose, and we would like to distribute those to other programs to distribute to their students. So you can contact me, and I have the directions ready to go on how to create that account through Essential Education and start taking the official practice test and having free vouchers.
Awesome. Yeah, it's great idea to have your staff take an official practice test just to see, or a practice test even, just to see what it's like, get that voucher, use those all up, because we'd love to see you just become familiar, and the more familiar you are, the more familiar your students can become. So we are at the end of our time, and I'd like to be cognizant of your time, but I will send out this to Brandy and she can distribute, and then we will have this available as a recorded session as well. And then you can go on anytime and find our educator resources. And of course, you can reach me. I'll just go through these quickly because we're almost at the end. But you can reach me here at any time for questions, or if you want me to just pop into a meeting you might be having with your staff, I am more than willing to do that. Or if you just want a Q&A session, we can do that as well. So I thank you for your time. I loved having you all here. It's great to meet you. And please, again, feel free to reach out at any time, and have a great day.
Thank you so much, Tess. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thanks, Brandy. Appreciate your assistance.